let's talk about what's happening today with not only your brand, but I mean, we're going to talk about your brand as an example, but in general with Canadian businesses, specifically Canadian businesses who have a large market in the United States. Today, just to put the listeners into like what's going on, there was a rule that said if you buy something from Canada or from the like vice versa, there is a limit of $800. And if you buy something less than $800, you don't pay tariffs basically. And that was eliminated a couple of weeks ago. So tell me about what happened and how is it affecting your business specifically?
Yeah, so the rule you're talking about is called, I guess it's a policy more than anything. It's called the
Hmm.
de minimis.
Yeah.
So it was anything under $800 US shipping, not just from Canada, but globally,
Yeah.
entering the US was duty and tariff free, which, as an e-commerce brand, not doing wholesale, many of us use that exemption. Like,
Yeah.
people would even have packages that were over that and then end up splitting them to not have to hit tariffs and stuff like that. So it was really I would say advantageous to small businesses
Hmm.
outside of the US, but also inside the US. So like there's many businesses inside the US that would import using that as well. So I think it's one of those policies where they took it away and, it is harmful, I think, to everybody involved that was utilizing it on a daily basis. So when that went away, which was, I believe, August 29th, so
Hmm.
about the time of recording, almost a month ago,
Yeah.
that means that, packages can no longer just go to the US without duties and tariffs. Specifically for Canada, that brings into question the CUSMA Act, the Canada, US, Mexico Act, which is the trade agreement between
Hmm.
all three countries. And, depending on what you sell and where it's made, you may or may not be compliant. And if you are compliant, that's actually a really good thing because then you don't have to pay tariffs or duties, but you may have to pay like processing fees and stuff like that at the border, which are pretty minor.
Hmm.
If you're not compliant, which is where my brand falls into, then you're having to pay, a base duty tariff plus the additional emergency
Yeah.
tariff that was put on to Canada, which stacks. So for us, in our case, we went from paying 0% to paying somewhere between 55 to 63% of our package value in tariffs.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, as an ethical brand producing in Canada, we don't have margins to absorb that, nor will
Yeah.
the customer pay it either, which
Yeah.
totally makes sense. So basically, we shut off our shipping August 25th, as
Hmm.
did many small brands. A lot of brands, even if they were compliant, they shut it off anyways because they weren't really sure how to
Yeah.
manage that process either.
Hmm. So, what are the terms for compliance?
Yeah, so they vary by product. So
Okay.
I would say so when you're shipping to the US, there's something called HTS codes. It's basically, I actually don't even know, harmonized tariff schedule codes, I think is
Yeah.
what it stands for.
Yeah.
And basically they categorize what you're selling. So like this shirt would have like a certain number. So then you kind of have to go through the CUSMA Act and read like what
Okay.
is, applicable. So for
Hmm.
certain products, like if there's enough transformation that happens in Canada, they're considered compliant. The thing is with apparel, which is what I sell, it actually has very specific regulations and it's
Hmm.
excluded from most of the transformation rules, which means that in order to qualify, we need to be knitting, dyeing our fabric in Canada using CUSMA yarns, using yarns that are spun in Canada, North or
Okay.
Mexico or US, and then making it in Canada. And we actually do knit about 60% of our fabric in Canada, which is very unusual. But we use imported yarns because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of yarn spinning that happens in these three countries. There's actually none that I
True.
know of in Canada.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about yarn, not like yarn you knit with, but like
Hmm.
industrial yarns. So it's very hard to comply. And it's honestly something we've never even thought about because we've never had to. So the de minimis announcement happened like, I think 30 days before it went into effect. So that's not a lot of time if you're making a product.
Yeah.
We're knitting fabric out to like January right now. Like we can't change
Yeah.
things. So yeah, so that's the rule that we fall into is that we don't qualify, which is very unfortunate given that we
Mm.
are a Canadian brand and we are manufacturing here, but apparel just seems
Yes.
to have its own set of rules.
Hmm. Very interesting. Also, in the fashion world, you always start creating way in advance. Like you said, you're doing things for the next season and the season after that. So
Mhm.
you can't just immediately stop what you're doing. Recently, I saw you posted on Threads that you had to pay around 400 US dollars for a client. Tell me a little bit more about that story and what happened there.
Oh gosh, yeah, I was just doing my cash flow forecasting, and so I got to see the actual conversion to US. It
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
$477 Canadian. So
Okay.
a really good, loyal customer had ordered from us before the de minimis ended, and somehow it got a little bit delayed by UPS, and so it
Okay.
didn't cross the border until after the de minimis. So
Okay.
they assessed it with like full duties and full brokerage fees. So the package I think was about 750 US dollars and the duties were 330 US dollars. So that was like basically half the package value. And
Yeah.
of course, the customer wasn't expecting it and she's not going to want to pay that. And she's a really loyal customer. So we're like, well, we don't want this package to come back and then have to refund the order.
Yeah.
Like, what a mess. So we paid it. And yeah, there goes all our profit on that order, So it's very upsetting. Thankfully, that I think is the only one that got caught in that
Mm-hmm.
transition. But that's the reality if we did start shipping just direct from
Yeah.
Canada and out to the US. And
Yeah.
that's just not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Just to clarify for the people who are listening to this and who don't know who pays what, basically, when a product arrives to the US, the person buying that product is technically supposed to pay the tariffs and the duties. And if it's a company, they're importing a lot of stuff. They have like a big container of products. They have to pay everything that comes. It's not Canada that has to pay. It's the people in the US who have to pay. But in your situation, you might say, it's a loyal customer, so it's okay this time. I'm gonna I'm gonna pay this on their behalf, but technically they're the ones who are supposed to pay. So because it's going to cost them a lot of money, they will no longer buy from you because it's going to cost more than the price of the goods that they're buying technically. So just to clarify things, because people
Mhm.
are confused about who pays what. They think that it's the country of origin who has to pay the money and send it to the US or something like that, but it's not. It's the people in the US who are paying for that. So Christy, tell me, what percentage of your sales, total sales of, during your year, comes from the US?
Yeah, I would say on average it's about 35%, but as the year
Okay.
went on, it actually got closer to 50% in the summer.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big portion of our sales over the summer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to clarify about that duties payment is um, there's two options. So like what the situation I explained with the customer is called DDU. It's like duties delivered
Yeah.
unpaid. So then the customer has to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of customers just reject packages, and then
Yeah.
you lose the sale. There is something called DDP, duties delivered prepaid, and
Yeah.
that's what the US is trying to force us to do, which is they're
Mm,
trying to force us to pay the duties before it crosses the border,
yeah.
which the mechanism to do that doesn't really exist for um, certain types of carriers. So that's where that kind of confusion is coming in. So a lot
Yeah.
of brands, if they have like lower duties, what they're doing is they're
Mm-hmm.
charging the duties at checkout and then they are
Yeah.
prepaying them
Yeah.
before they cross the border. But they're often trying to recoup them in some way because it's
Yes.
just so much money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see from my own behavior when I'm shopping. I do buy a lot from abroad because of, the different things that I need. And if it's not like when I go to the checkout page, I see like how much is, how much do I have to pay in duties and stuff. But if I don't know, I would be hesitating to buy. So it's always
Oh, for
nicer
sure.
to have a clear vision of how much it's going to really cost me, as opposed to, I mean, it affects how we decide if we want to buy or not. So it might be also affecting what your customers in the US are thinking about when they want to purchase
Mhm.
from you. If you're building a product based brand, you don't have to do it alone. The Scale Partner community is a free space where founders connect, exchange ideas, and support each other. Inside, you'll find workshops, honest conversations about growth, and people who truly get the journey. Join us for free at community.rectified.co/scale partner.
Mhm.
Christy, Are you talking to other business owners in Canada who are going through these things, and what what's going on? Just tell me a little bit more, like an insider information kind of thing about what's happening in your world.
Hmm. Yeah, I have pretty good relationships in the fashion industry
Mhm.
because they've been around for a while. Majority of people I know just stopped shipping to the US and still aren't shipping to the US.
Mhm.
Those brands that have large US presence are definitely motivated, I would say, to figure out a way to do it. So a lot of them are trying to figure out, can they open up US warehousing? Can they do some sort of like batch shipping where they're using a
Yeah.
freight forwarder? Like there's a few options to do. But I think most people I know that have like a lower percentage of US sales just have decided just
Yeah.
not to deal with it
Yeah.
whatsoever. But I would say that most bigger brands, even outside of fashion,
Mhm.
the US is a big market
Yeah.
for them. I know brands that are like 80% US shipping out of Canada.
Yes.
So just imagine how devastating that would be to their business.
Yeah.
So I think people are talking about like strategies, obviously things we can do within Canada to increase our sales and looking at other markets as
Mhm.
well. But those are like longer term
Yeah.
strategies and they do take some time to implement as well.